Good evening, everybody. Before Ben jumps on here, Pharmacist Ben Fuchs is the guest tonight. Many of you do know who he is, many of you don't know who he is, so I'll give him a little introduction, especially give him time to log on here and join me. Well, Ben, we consider him our skincare expert, our resident skincare expert. To my knowledge, he's been in the skincare industry his entire career, basically, and most famously, he worked with Blistex. I think that's the name that would jump out for most people, worked in the formulation lab of Blistex. He brings a certain light to many different things that sort of didn't make sense before. For me, I had read a bunch of Dr. Wallach's books, and I was even on the products. I still did not get it until I met Ben Fuchs and heard him live, literally. It was somehow he made it click. So he's got this magic way of helping us to understand things. I've got a number of things to ask him. They're mostly about skin. Now, Ben is very knowledgeable about a whole bunch of things. Usually you see him speaking, he's got the bookshelves behind him. It's not a gimmick. In his desk, there's books everywhere. This guy lives with it. And as an avid reader myself, I still cannot catch up to him. His well of knowledge is very deep and very appreciated. And he's gotten many people out of jams, truthfully, on answers that I couldn't find. I couldn't just look it up and say, what do I do for this? And Ben had an answer for it. So he's been doing this a long time. He's been with Dr. Wallach many years, well over 20 years, and again, he knows the science in and out, and he has this magic way of explaining it all to help us make sense of it. Today I want to ask him about warts, I want to ask him about skin tags, I want to ask him about liver skin reactions particularly, and this goes for people who say they've started the product or they've started the program, they've gone gluten-free even. Sometimes people do a positive change. They say, I went gluten-free and I started having this crazy acne. This is one of those weird things that I do want to ask him about because the skin is so complicated. A lot of what we do here is really basic stuff. We give, ABC answers, kindergarten answers. Get off the bad foods, get on the 90 essential nutrients. Well, it can be more complicated than that. And there are some people, it's a minority, but the people who fail to get a result or get an opposite result, especially with skin, it can be quite worrisome, and sometimes you do want the more in-depth explanation. I also want to ask him about scars and stretch marks. Now, all of these things are things that I have basic answers for, but I'm hoping the depth will help more. And again, I hope he jumps on here pretty soon. I see all you guys joining. Now, I'll give you my opinion on these to start with. Our basic answer for things like warts and skin tags is that it's going to be an immune response in some way. It's going to be an immune problem. It's probably not going to be one problem. A lot of times we can pick it out and we can say, oh, that's a calcium deficiency, that's an essential fatty acid deficiency. When it comes to things like warts and skin tags, it's really not the case. There's a lot of problems going on at that time, So to have an immune problem going on, you of course have nutrient deficiencies present. Hopefully he has a better answer for this, but like I said, with warts, skin tags, stuff like that, it's probably an immune reaction. It probably has something to do with digestion, meaning it could have started with a digestion problem. It could have started with an illness, actually. So I got a skin tag a couple of years ago. When this virus thing started, I was on the road. I wrote about it in my book, Fake Diseases. I told the story. I was on the road, and I got completely sick, basically, and I was, debilitated in a hotel room. So point being, after I got sick, I got the first skin tag I ever got. I got it on my eye. Now, I know, and I've heard Ben say that you can cut them off yourself. You can do that, but I wanted to see what happened if I just left it. Right? I didn't want to cut it off. It was on my eye. But the point was, as soon as after I got sick, I had this skin tag show up, and I decided not to do anything about it. Just keep doing the regular regime, taking the 90 essential nutrients, eating clean, staying hydrated, keeping salt in my water and stuff like that. And it did recede, but it did take a while. It took several months. I felt it going down. At first it was irritating, and then it disappeared after a few months. I think maybe 3-4 months total it went away. So that can give you hope, but obviously I was already at basically 100%. So if you get some sort of immune thing, like a virus, infection of any kind, you could get a wart, you could get a skin tag, you could get cold sores, you could get those annoying things in our mouths. They can be painful. This can be an immune reaction. And we know there's going to be a deficiency involved, but the deficiency did not have to cause it, is my point. So hopefully he has a better a better answer for warts and stuff, because I don't really know what the treatment is for warts. I would put colloidal silver on it or something antimicrobial. I would just keep doing the regular regimen. And by the way, this goes for HPV, HSV, stuff like that too. Herpes, people might call it. People are getting cold sores. Well, most adults in the Western world have the antibodies supposedly for herpes, but they're not showing any symptoms of it. So that means, again, most people have quote, herpes in the Western world, but most people don't show any signs of it until they get low or until they get an immune infection. Something causes them to go over the edge, and now you'll get cold sores showing or skin tags showing. Cysts even, I would put in that category. I don't know if Ben will put them in the same category, but I put them in the same category. Basically, there's not one thing that causes it. And even if you're at 100%, something can knock you down. A cold sore could show up from that. A skin tag could show up. A wart could show up. When it comes to scars and stretch marks, is one of the other things that I wanted to ask him about here. I know in this business that I've seen incredible results just from the basic. I know that a lot of people just on the basic regimen, they'll get amazing results on scars and stretch marks. Not always. Stretch marks seem to be a little bit easier. Scars seem to be really quite difficult to get rid of. But again, there's a lot of people, not even just on the 90 essential nutrients, bone soup, switching to keto. Some people switch to paleo and they say, hey, my stretch marks went away. You know, this is common, but it can be much more deep-seated. And when you think of connective tissue, if there's problems on the outside, there's problems on the inside. There's connective tissue all throughout the body. So if somebody has a connective tissue problem showing up on the outside, the body might make the decision to work on the inside first, meaning you might not get the stretch mark result for several months, but you could assume that inside your body's fixing all kinds of things. Remember, skin, the connective tissue, this is the same stuff that holds veins together. You know, at the end of each little vein, there's connective tissue there. So this is where you get things like varicose veins is in the same category. It does need minerals to repair this, and it also does need sorry, I'm reading this stuff at the same time. It also does need the connective tissue, and bone broth is probably my favorite. I think it's Ben's favorite too. Even though we sell products of connective tissue, we recommend bone broth. It's the easiest way to do it. It's the cheapest way to do it, in my opinion. A lot of times the grocery store won't even have bones for sale on the shelf. You'll have to go to the butcher counter to ask them. And a lot of times they're ready to throw them out. They got big bags of them. They throw them out all the time. And if you ask them, hey, could you sell me a bag of bones? A lot of times they'll even give them to you for free because they're not worth anything to the grocery store. But sometimes they cost $2 for a big bag, $5. Again, big bag. So it goes a long way. I don't really like grocery store bone broths. He should be joining here. I accepted his request. There we go.
Hey.
Mr. Ben Fuchs.
Hey, I was just enjoying listening to you.
What do you think of my basic answers for those questions?
I love your answers. I didn't realize I had to hit the video. I was going to be just listening to you, man. Look at my hair.
I was going to comment on your hair, but I like it.
Thank you.
So I introduced you a little bit, Ben. I don't know if I got it completely correct. To my knowledge, you've been in the skincare business your entire career. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, I started doing skincare when I was in pharmacy school. You know the story. I don't want to bore you with the story again.
No, you don't have to repeat the whole thing, but...
Yeah, so yeah, I started doing skincare in you ready for this? 1981. I formulated my first skincare product when I was 21 years old, so 40 years ago. And then, and one of my jobs, I worked for Blistex, as you know, and one of my jobs was to do research. I had a lot of jobs. I was like Dr. Jones, the guy who invented Blistex. I was his right-hand man. So I did everything pretty much. But one of my jobs was to do research. And back then, we really didn't know a lot about the skin. So I would have to go to the library and dig out all of these textbooks and encyclopedias and journal articles about retinoic acid and about dermatology and about various skin diseases. And I learned a heck of a lot about the skin. Then when I graduated pharmacy school, I worked in drugstores for a little bit, and then I started my own skincare pharmacy. And I've been doing skincare compounding for many, many years. I'm opening up another compounding pharmacy, skincare compounding pharmacy here in a couple of weeks.
Really?
And in between, while I had my pharmacy, I was developing skincare products, and I started several companies, and I now have another company that I started. And the bottom line is I learned a heck of a lot about the skin, and I studied the skin literally every single day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year for hours a day. And while you would think there's only so much you can understand or learn about the skin, I learn new things about the skin every day. After 40 years, I'm still learning new things about the skin, and the pieces are falling into place to the point now where I have a really well-developed, fleshed out, three-dimensional picture of how the skin works and what it does. And it's funny, Ryan, because ironically, the skin is the only organ that's on the outside of the body. It's the only organ we can really see. But at the same time, it's this very misunderstood organ, and how we take care of our skin flies in the face of how it's put together. How we take care of our skin doesn't match up with how it's put together, and that's why there's so many skincare companies out there. You ever wonder why there's hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of different skincare companies out there is because everybody's always looking for something else because nothing's
It's huge
working.
business. Yep.
Because nothing's working. People are just generally dissatisfied with the state of their skin and the state of their skincare products. It's because the technologies that we use to create skincare products are based in a time when we didn't understand the skin. Skincare product chemistry, the modern skincare products were developed before we knew what cells were, or before we knew cell theory. We knew what cells were. We didn't really understand the relationship between cells and health. So today's skincare products really are based in a time gone by. They're anachronistic. They're from the late 19th century. And as I say, even in the 1980s, we didn't really understand how the skin was put together and constituted, let alone when skincare products were first, the modern skincare product industry was born in the middle to the late 19th century. So what I do today is I help people understand the skin. You know, you've heard the term structure function, right? I know you have because you talked about it. You and I have talked about it before. The function of an organ depends on the structure, right? And the function of an organ function of the skin is only going to be as effective as the structure. It's going to the effectiveness, the functionality of the skin is dependent on the structure. And if we don't understand the structure, how are we going to leverage it to have good function? So you have to understand how the skin is put together. If you're going to really understand how to take care of your skin, number one, how to use skincare products, number two, and how to address problems that show up on the skin. So you were talking about herpes, right?
Well, I was talking about warts, basically.
Okay, warts. So what is a wart? Tell me what a wart is. And you're a smart guy. You're one of the smartest guys when it comes to health that I've ever known, especially considering you're so young. But let me ask you, what is a wart?
Well, in this business, especially on this page, we tend to try and break it down to the simplest point. I call it an immune response. I call it an immune reaction.
What is the mechanism? Immune response is great, but that doesn't really help you when it comes to addressing the wart.
Well, this is why I wanted you on, because I don't know the answer to this question. I don't know the answer to this question.
I'm not trying to catch you. I'm not trying to do a gotcha here on this, but I'm just asking, in your imagination, how would you explain a wart?
A malfunction of the cells.
No, literally, what is happening? Isn't it interesting? I'm not trying to pick on you, but
I thought about this for like 2 weeks before. I'm like, I got to ask him about warts because I don't understand them.
What is? Yeah, exactly. And a wart is a common experience. A wart is, or a cold sore. So what happens is, skins. And
you consider them the same thing, wart and cold sore?
Yeah, they're both viral infections. Cold sore is a herpes virus, and ordinary wart could be any kind of virus. They call them viral warts. That's technically what they are. And when we want to get rid of a wart, what we have to do is we have to burn it off. And if you get a wart on your foot or your hand, you go to the drugstore and get something called salicylic acid, which is an acid, and you put it on the wart and it burns it off. But what is exactly going on when you have a wart? Well, your skin is built up in layers, like baklava or like lasagna, right? So it's kind of interesting because you don't really see layers here, right? And the entire skin, the entire organ of the skin is only about as thick as 10 pieces of notebook paper. That's the whole thickness of the skin, 10 pieces.
That's including the dead and the living tissues underneath.
Whole skin. The organ called the skin is 10 pieces of notebook paper. It's made up of 3 layers. It's made up of a surface layer that's about 1/10 of a piece of notebook paper thick. That's like fingernails. It's like a rhinoceros's horn or a deer's antler.
I like the baklava.
What?
I like the baklava.
You like baklava
example
better? No. The baklava is just the layers. The very top is made up of a hard fingernail-like material. And it has to be because it kind of keeps everything in. Do you ever look at a leaf and real closely and you see like a waxy coating on the surface? That waxy coating on the surface protects the tissue underneath, and that's similar to what happens on the skin. You got a waxy coating. I call it a fingernail-like material because it's made up of the same protein the fingernails are made up, or hair is made up of, or as I say, rhino horns or deer antlers. It's all called keratin. It's a very hard protein, and it's like a fingernail, like a microscopic fingernail, about 1/10 of a piece of notebook paper thick, and it holds everything in place. And that's your water barrier. That's why you don't dissolve into a puddle every time you take a shower or go out in the rain. The water beads up off of this hard fingernail-like material. Underneath that fingernail-like material, you have about 1 piece of notebook paper thick, another layer that's about 1 piece of notebook paper thick. It itself is layered with sublayers. We're not going to get into that. But this layer underneath is called the epidermis. It's on top of the dermis. It's about 1 piece of notebook paper thick, right? And then underneath that, you have the bulk of the skin, okay? The bulk of the skin is about 9 pieces of notebook paper thick. And that is, as you were talking about earlier, the connective tissue. So 90% of the organ called the skin is connective tissue, which means if you want to have great skin right from the get-go, you got to build your connective tissue. If you want to have great skin, you got to be doing bone broth, you got to be doing your glucogel caps, you got to be doing your Fucoid Z, you got to be doing vitamin C and the Beyond Tangy Tangerine and the Ultimate EFAs. You got to do everything you got to do to build up the connective tissue. And here's a little shortcut for you if you want to build up the connective tissue and build up that 90% of the skin. Take arthritis supplements. Anything that helps you with arthritis.
Yeah, bone and joint.
Right? Anything that helps you with arthritis is going to help you with this 90% of the skin, the dermis. Now, I'm not going to talk about the dermis because you're asking about warts, and warts are not a dermal phenomenon. They're an epidermal phenomenon. So let's talk about this layer on the top. So first of all, you got the structure of the skin. It's 3 layers. You got the epidermis. You got the surface. It's called, by the way, I didn't tell you this. It's called the stratum corneum. Stratum means layer, like strata means layer, and corneum means hard. And so this fingernail is 1/10 of a piece of notebook paper thick on the top is the hard layer. Underneath that, you have the epidermis, and this is where the warts are born. So let's talk about the epidermis. One piece, it's as thick as 1 piece of notebook paper, right? Ridiculously thin. But that 1 piece of notebook paper is where the skin cells are born and where the skin cells perform all of their functions. So at the bottom of the epidermis, you have a nursery or an incubator. And in
That's the dermis?
No, the bottom of the epidermis.
Okay.
Not the dermis, the bottom of the epidermis. The dermis is underneath. Okay, the bottom of the epidermis, this piece of notebook paper at the bottom, you have a layer where skin cells are born. These skin cells are born from stem cells. So this layer is constantly, stem cells in this layer are constantly making skin cells. Then the skin cells rise from the bottom of the epidermis to the stratum corneum, over through the top. And many skin diseases, from eczema to dry skin to psoriasis to acne to viral warts, are all occurring at this level where the cells are rising to the top. I'm going to tell you how a viral wart is involved in this. So can you picture this in your mind's eye?
I'm picturing it now, yeah.
Cells are being born at the bottom, and they're migrating to the top where they become the very tippy top, the stratum corneum. This journey upwards to the top is technically called transit, and transit time takes about 4 to 8 weeks. Okay, and that's control. And as these cells are rising from the bottom to the top, they're doing lots of things. First of all, the bottom layer, by the way, is called the basal layer, right? You may have heard
the basal layer of the epidermis.
Correct.
Okay.
You can see how you can see how it just started. You can start to see the complexity here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the basal layer of the epidermis is where the cells are born and they rise up to the top to the stratum corneum. And as they're rising from the bottom to the top, they're becoming progressively less alive. They start off their life at the bottom, round and plump and juicy, and then they migrate to the top in transit, and they become flat and dead at the very surface. Round and plump and juicy at the beginning of life, flat and dead at the end, just like people. Right? We start our life round and plump and juicy and full of life force, and we end up flat and dead at the surface. And that's the journey of the skin cell. It's called transit. And as the skin cell is journeying from the bottom to the top, it is taking on a different, listen to the word I said, a different shape. And that's why this process of cells moving from the bottom to the top and take on a different shape is called differentiation. And differentiation is one of the most fascinating, one of the most complicated, one of the most tightly regulated, and one of the most impactful processes when it comes to diseases in all of biology. Cancer is a differentiation issue. Heart disease is a differentiation issue.
Cancer is easy to see for that, yeah.
Right? Because cancer, they're not doing their different shapes correctly. They get stuck in one gear, and they just repeat and repeat and repeat instead of progressing.
This is why people think stem cells would solve the problem.
That's one of the reasons they want to use stem cells for that. Exactly right. So in the skin, this differentiation concern shows up in various ways. If a differentiation is not occurring as it should and cells get stuck in one gear, they spin in one gear, what can happen is you can get overgrowth of cells. Cells don't go through their life cycle and rather keep going. They keep dividing because you don't get, what happens is as the cells are taking on a different shape, they're feeding back to the bottom and they say, stop. each shape, let's imagine you have shape A, shape B, shape C, shape D, and shape E. Shape E sends a signal back to the bottom and says, stop growing. We got plenty of shapes. We don't need any more. But if it gets stuck at shape B and you don't get to shape E, cells keep dividing. They keep growing. And this is where you get growths and plaques and skin tags. And this is where you get viral warts from. What ends up
Viral
happening,
warts, is this meaning it's literally a viral infection, or this is just
the
a
virus infects
lack of
the cell.
communication?
It's a lack of communication, but it's caused by the virus infecting the cell. You follow me? The virus attacks the cell, it prevents differentiation, and you end up with an overgrowth of cells that are non-functional, that aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. Psoriasis is the same thing. A viral wart is a form of psoriasis, is a very similar mechanism to a viral wart. You follow?
I'm following. I wrote down the word signal molecules.
It's a signaling issue. It is a signaling issue. That's exactly what it is. Now, where nutrition becomes important in all of this is because the movement, this differentiation process, is regulated by vitamins, especially and nutrients, not just vitamins, but nutrients, especially vitamin A, which, by the way, is used to treat acne. It's used to treat psoriasis. It's used to treat viral warts. It's used to treat eczema. And it's used to treat cancer.
And this is part of what we call the good fats, D, E, A, and K vitamins.
Vitamin A. Vitamin A.
Well, D, E, A, and K is what we consider part of the party of good fats.
Yes, vitamin A is a good fat. That's right. It's a fatty vitamin. Then there are the essential fatty acids. The essential fatty acids go to make the membrane on the cell. The membrane on the cell is where the signaling molecules interact on the cell. If the membrane is dysfunctional, because you're not getting enough essential fatty acids, the signaling molecules can't interact with the cell, and the cell, again, is not going to get the signal it's not going to be able to send the signal down to the bottom to stop growing. And so many skin diseases are caused by vitamin A deficiency. Many skin diseases are caused by essential fatty acid deficiency. In fact, if you want to do one or two things to take care of any skin issue, whether it's dry skin, whether it's aging skin, whether it's psoriasis or eczema or acne or dermatitis, which are the main skin diseases, think vitamin A and think essential fatty acids. Now, it's not quite that simple because vitamin A and essential fatty acids have to be absorbed. Remember, it's not just what you take, it's what you absorb.
It's what you absorb.
Right?
You are what you absorb.
And so your fats are tricky to absorb. If you have a gallbladder taken out, or you have a gallbladder problem, you have a liver problem, and 100 million Americans have fatty liver disease. If you have Crohn's disease or an intestinal problem, if you have a pancreatic issue, I'm talking about a lot of people here. If you add if you include all of these different dysfunctions, you're talking about hundreds of millions, probably.
Millions of people, yeah.
Right? And even stomach acid, deficiencies in stomach acid can compromise absorption. So it's not just taking vitamin A, and it's not just taking essential fatty acids. You also have to make sure that you're absorbing them at the level of the intestine. Fatty acids, fats are absorbed in the intestine. And not just intestinal health is important, but the stomach, the pancreas, the gallbladder, and the liver are also important. And many people, especially women, as they get older, have fat malabsorption issues. So you got to make sure that you're not only taking your essential fatty acids and vitamin A, among other nutrients, I'll tell you a couple more here in a second, but also making sure that you're absorbing them, using your ultimate enzymes, apple cider vinegar with your meals, probiotics, the nightly essence, anything that helps you absorb fats, bile salts, lecithin granules, all of these things can help you absorb fats. Now, there's two minerals that are very important for the skin too, and these are fatty minerals. Most minerals are not fatty, but these two minerals are fatty in the sense that they require bile and digestive juices, lecithin and such, digestive enzymes, fatty enzymes for absorption, and they're especially important for the skin in their zinc and selenium. In fact, zinc and selenium are used to treat a skin disease that people don't really think of as a skin disease. It's called dandruff, right? People don't realize that dandruff is a skin disease. And when you have dandruff, you'll use Head and Shoulders shampoo. What is the active ingredient in Head and Shoulders shampoo? Zinc.
Never looked at it. Never read the label.
Well, I'm telling you, it's zinc.
Wow.
Yeah. And what's the active ingredient in Selsun Blue?
Is it
Selenium.
zinc? Selenium?
No,
Wow.
selenium.
Okay.
Selenium. So, and the reason being, both zinc and selenium are involved in fat metabolism in the skin cells as well. So you can actually use topical Head and Shoulders or Selsun Blue for dermatitis, for scaly skin, for a lot of skin.
You know, I've
Psoriasis.
heard people say that a lot, actually.
Yes.
Now that I'm thinking about it in the business, I've heard people say, no, I used Head and Shoulders on my face, on my acne.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even for acne, which is another issue, a differentiation issue. One of the neat things about differentiation, how the cells are moving from the bottom to the top, and this is really cool, as the cells are moving from the bottom to the top, right? And as they're changing shape, they're dumping their contents overboard. And those contents become moisture factors. So the more differentiation is the healthier the differentiation process is occurring, the healthier the differentiation, the more moisture factors you're going to have. The less healthy the differentiation, the less moisture factors you're going to have, and you're going to have dry skin. And you're going to say, oh my God, I better get a moisturizing cream. And then you're going to put a moisturizing cream on the surface of the skin, and that's going to further suppress differentiation.
Because your body says we've got enough.
Because your body thinks everything's okay. You're tricking the body, you're tricking the skin. And so what ends up happening is people get addicted to their moisturizing lotion. We should really be...
Or your Blistex.
Right, or your Blistex, that's exactly right. I love that. Dr. Jones became a very rich man because of that phenomena at Blistex. So the cool thing about the differentiation process is not only is it important for building a healthy barrier, but it's also important for making the production of these fatty materials that are going to seal in the moisture, natural fatty materials. A moisturizer is supposed to duplicate that. It's supposed to be an artificial way of putting fats in the skin or on the surface of the skin when you'd be much better off stimulating your own skin cells to make these fats. This is another interesting molecule. I hope I'm not getting too much in the weeds here, but it's really fascinating. As cells are moving up from the bottom to the top in this transit process, and as they're differentiating, they're making a protein. And this is one of the most fascinating proteins in all of biology. We've only known about it for about 30 or 40 years in the skincare business. In fact, we didn't know about it when I was doing my research in the 1980s. It was only really discovered in the 1970s or 1980s, but really didn't start studying intensely until about 20 or 30 years ago. This protein is made in the skin cells as they're rising to the top, and inside the skin cells as they're rising to the top, the protein is changing shape. And as it's changing shape, it eventually becomes a protein that strengthens the stratum corneum. But if your cells are not differentiating correctly, if you're missing vitamin A, if you're missing essential fatty acids, if you have inflammation in that area, this protein is called Pellegrin, is not going to be made appropriately, and you're going to end up with breaks in the surface of the skin. And that's called eczema, or you may call it dermatitis. It's also going to cause water to evaporate, and it could be one of the causes of dry skin. The Pellegrin deficiencies are one of the hidden causes of various skin diseases, and building Pellegrin is one of the most important things you could do if you have dry skin, if you have eczema, or if you have dermatitis or sensitive skin. There's an amino acid that is not, it's pretty much an essential amino acid. Your body can make a little bit of it, but it's pretty much essential. And if you're not either supplementing with this amino acid or getting in the foods that contain this amino acid, you can be deficient in it, and then you'll be deficient in Pellegrin, and then you'll end up with really dry skin, and you'll say, what the heck's going on? I better put a moisturizer on, completely oblivious to the fact that all you may have needed was this amino acid to help you make the Pellegrin.
So it's like cholesterol or probiotics. You can make a little bit of it, but you need more.
Well, they call it conditionally essential. Although now I've heard people say it's essential. It's called histidine. Have you heard of this?
Yep.
The amino acid histidine. Nobody ever talks about the amino acid histidine, but if you're dealing with severely dry skin that you can't get rid of, or you have eczema, or you have sensitive skin, or you have any issues with the surface, the barrier, think Pellegrin and start supplementing with histidine. So just in the last 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or however long we've been talking, you've got zinc, you've got selenium, you've got vitamin A, you've got essential fatty acids, and by the way, the omega-6 essential fatty acids are more important. Well, the omega-3s are important too, but the omega-6s are the real important ones for the skin. Contrary to what you hear from a lot of even nutritionists telling you don't need it.
Contrary from what I say, truthfully, we neglect omega-6.
We neglect omega-6s. That's exactly right, especially for the skin, and also the amino acid histidine. These are 5 nutritional elements that are critical for all skin health issues, and it may be that deficiencies in any one of them or deficiencies in several of them can be the cause of your skin issue. You'll go to the dermatologist. He's not going to tell you any of this. You're going to go put your moisturizing cream on. That's not going to help you. when all you may have needed was an EFA supplement or maybe a digestive enzyme so you could absorb EFAs. You can see that there's these intimate relationships between our nutrition, our nutritional status, and how our skin shows up. And we all think about the skin in the skincare business. We all think, what kind of cream can I put on? What kind of lotion can I put on?
How does warts come into this? And you mentioned viral.
Warts, the virus.
1 second. Are you suggesting that the virus is already present? Is this ability is already here for us?
Yes.
Okay.
Viruses. You have more viruses in your body than there are stars in the Milky Way, in the galaxy.
Most of our weight is virus and bacteria that isn't even us.
A huge amount of it is viruses. There's like more viruses in a gram of your stool than there are stars in the Milky Way galaxy.
I meant most of our cells, not most of our weight, but yeah,
we're saturated with viruses. That's a whole other thing about this, the misunderstanding of what a virus is. Viruses are just little pieces of DNA. They're not alive. They're not things. They're just little pieces of information that are everywhere. They're in the air. They're in the water. They're in your body. They're all over your cells. You have viruses that are in a battle with bacteria in your body. The bacteria kill the viruses, and the viruses kill the bacteria. And they're in this constant battle that accounts for a balance between everything. Of course, if you do things to kill the bacteria, the viruses can supersede. They can overgrow.
So if you take an antibiotic, you could get a wart.
Antibiotics, chlorine in the water, chlorine in your antibiotics in your food. And there's all kinds of ways we kill off the bacteria. And this current viral infection that the numbskulls want to inject people with to take care of, or lock you up in your house to take care of, are really the end result of suppressed immune systems from a lack of understanding of our bodies and poor lifestyle choices that we're making. And that's
Ben,
really the issue.
Is this how we can come to the conclusion that most people in the Western world, most adults in the Western world have herpes? I'm using the quotes here because...
I don't know. I don't even know how you could test for that, but I can tell you this. Viruses are opportunistic. They lie in wait for an opportunity. And that opportunity is when your immune system is suppressed. So what suppresses the immune system? Number one, stress. Psychological stress suppresses your immune system. So if you're under psychological stress, that's when, or even physical stress for that matter, even if you have a cold or if you're exerting yourself physically, you're not getting enough sleep, all of these can cause opportunistic viruses to attack. So stress, number one. Nutritional deficiencies can cause viruses to attack. Sugar, or processed foods can cause viruses to attack. All of that. All of these things that we do, the bottom line, what I'm trying to say here is we have control. We have control over this. We're led to believe that we're in the world and the viruses are attacking us. And it's like we're victims here of these viral attacks. No, we have an immune system that's designed to be able to handle that. I got something in my throat. Excuse me just a sec. I'm going to grab some water.
I mean, this is very interesting, guys, and it's pretty much a confirmation of what we already say. It's just way more detail.
You're doing incredible stuff, Ryan. I mean, everything you say is right on. You are one smart man. Even if you don't know all, I'm giving you 40 years of study here, and you're not even 40 years old, right? So you're not going to have this kind of detail, but everything you say is right on. Everybody out there, listen to Ryan Alexander. He knows what he's talking about.
Well, I was trained by the best, and that's including you.
All right, I appreciate that.
Tell me, do we have to burn or freeze warts off? Will they go away on their own?
Once you have a wart, it's out of your body. Think about what a wart is. It's outside your body.
It's in the dead part.
No, it's literally outside. It's outside the dead part. It's made up of the dead part.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
It's outside. So you can't really do anything biochemically, from the body to get rid of it because it's outside the body. It's done. As they say, that cow has left the barn. And that's one of the problems with dermatology is dermatology treats the cow after it left the barn.
True.
The trick is to get it underneath. So once you have a wart, yes, the only way to do it is to cut it off or burn it off. But you want to take care of tomorrow's wart. And that's what you want to really deal with. All these problems, whether it's a viral infection or whether it's miscommunication from lack of signaling molecules or lack of nutrients, are the mediator to inflammation. They're the cause of an inflammatory process, and it's really the inflammation that's causing the problem. We don't see it as inflammation because it's microscopic inflammation. It's micro-inflammation. But what happens is that you just picture in your mind's eye, the cell is rising from the bottom to the top in this differentiation transit process that we talked about. if there's little nicks and cuts in the area around the cell's not going to be able to get its nutrients. It's not going to be able to get oxygen. It's not going to be able to clean itself out. These little nicks and cuts are the end result or lead to an inflammatory process that's like an airbag that prevents the cell from being able to do its business. Inflammation, whether it's microinflammation or macroinflammation, is always a defensive response. So what you want to do...
It's a response that your body's working properly. You bang your knee, it gets inflamed.
Yes, it's a response. That's the most important thing to understand. If you have a response you don't like, you don't address the response directly. You address the cause
of the
whatever
response.
is causing that response. The stimulus.
Love it.
You eliminate the stimulus. You don't deal with the response. You eliminate the stimulus.
A lot of drugs attack the inflammation itself.
The response. They're attacking the response. Yes, our medical model attacks the response. Which, if you're the intelligent strategy is to attack or control the stimulus, not attack it, but change the stimulus.
Dr. Glidden puts it like the symptoms that we see most of the time is the result of the disease. It's not the disease itself, but our treatments tend to attack the result.
That is the flaw of that's the flaw of the medical model. And in fairness to the medical model, their job is not to address sickness. Their job is to alleviate suffering. That's what they're charged with, alleviating suffering. And they do a great job at alleviating suffering. That's their job. We get confused, or we get angry, or we get surprised when a medical professional doesn't take care of the problem. That's not their job. That's our job.
A lot of people don't understand that, though. They think they're there to cure the disease.
I know,
That's
and
not their
it's
job.
not a doctor's fault. You don't want to blame doctors. They're good people. I have a lot of friends who are doctors. They're good people. They want to alleviate suffering. That's why they got into being a doctor. They want to make the world a better place. But we give them a job that's not theirs. We're telling them to take care of us. They're not there to take care of us. They're there to address the symptoms so we can have some peace of mind so we're not suffering for a little bit. And let me tell you something. If you ever have knee surgery or you get into a car accident or you're in some kind of miserable pain, you want a pain pill. You want to take care of the symptom.
Thank God for Novocaine in that case.
Yes, exactly. Imagine when they had to take your tooth out or
they just give you whiskey
with no Novocaine. I read a book on surgery on medieval surgery, and they talked about what they have to do if they had cancer. They would have to have people hold you down on the table while they sawed your breast off or your limb off. So I don't rip on the medical model. I only rip on them when they're arrogant about what they're doing. And when they say this is the only way that we can do things, and it's not even the medical model itself, it's usually an authority like the government that's doing it. It's usually not the doctors themselves that are doing it. It's usually
doctors are more cautious than we give them credit for.
Yes, they are. They're more cautious. They're more open-minded for the most part. It's really the authorities, the government authorities that want to control things that really are the ones that are to blame for this kind of tyranny, this medical tyranny that we're now going through. It's not the doctors themselves, and I don't really blame them, and I don't blame the representatives of the medical model as much as I blame the people in power.
Politicians.
It's really politicians, yes, and they're people who are above the politicians, which is a whole other story.
Okay, so warts, skin tags, do you consider them in the same category?
Yes, skin tag is caused, instead of by a virus, it's caused by inflammation. And inflammation can do the same thing that a virus does. A virus triggers a differentiation disruption, and inflammation can trigger a differentiation disruption, and also something called glycation. You've heard of that, I'm sure, glycation, which is a sugaring process. And skin tags are a well-known precursor to a diagnosis for diabetes. They're associated with messed up blood sugar, with dysglycemia. And they usually only happen to older people. So, and by older, I'm talking about 40s or 50s. So when you have a skin tag, that's a sign that you at least want to check your blood sugar. And it's very normal for Americans, actually for everybody in the world, in the year 2021, to start to have messed up blood sugar starting somewhere in their 30s or 40s. That's just a typical thing.
Wind this back a second to what you said earlier. You said something about the hardening of the cell wall and the fact that the cell wall is basically made of essential fatty acids and
cell membrane, not the cell wall, cell membrane.
What's the difference between the cell wall and the cell membrane?
Cell wall only happens in plants, only occurs in plants, and it's literally a wall. It's it's fiber.
It's like a square instead of a blob.
It's hard. It's very hard. That's where fiber comes from. You don't have fiber in biology. You have fiber in botany.
So when you have a blood sugar problem, typically the Dr. Wallach at least says that this pretty much causes the cell membrane to become either hard or it's not letting things in and out properly.
Correct. Sugar is a very explosive stuff. You know, when we were kids, I didn't personally do this, but I heard about this being done. When kids wanted to pull a prank on somebody, they would put sugar in their gas tank.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because sugar gums things up. Sugar is very explosive. It's very sticky stuff. You ever see what happens when you heat sugar? It turns into this sticky, gooey mess, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, the same thing happens inside the body. The heat of the body in combination with excess sugar gums up the works. And it can disrupt cell membranes, absolutely, via this process called glycation. And it's one of the ways that we die. In fact, scientists have a very clever way of referring to the stuff that gets gooked up by the sugar. They call these particles, these goopy particles that are the end result of reactions between sugar and protein or sugar and fat, advanced glycated end products, or AGE, or age. They call them ages. And this is one of the hallmark or cardinal mechanisms of the aging process is glycation. It happens especially in very small blood vessels, in the eyes, in the fingers, in the toes, in the extremities of the body. And this is why diabetes is the leading cause of blindness. Diabetes is the leading cause of amputations, because of these blood vessels getting glycated. There's another condition that diabetics suffer from that's secondary to glycation, and this is a miserable condition that I would say probably 50% or more of people after a certain age suffer from. It's called neuropathy.
Yeah. Can lead to gangrene or blindness.
So eventually, yes. And these are all products of glycation. And neuropathy, sometimes they'll call peripheral neuropathy, meaning it's on the periphery, not only is it miserable for pain, it feels like a fire is going on inside your body. Mm-hmm. There's no fire, but it just feels like you're burning. Can you imagine feeling like you're burning with nothing burning and nothing helps?
People describe this all the time, and this is kind of why we say a blood sugar problem leads to a circulation problem. Yes. This is like a microcirculation problem of the cell that we're describing.
Yes, because the sugar gunks things up. Sugar burns things. Do you ever get a sugar burn?
I've seen it splatter out of the pan, yeah.
It burns hot. I remember I was reading an article a couple of years ago about a fire in a sugar factory in Florida. Yeah. It took them 4 days to put the fire out at the sugar factory because fire burns so freaking hot. So yes, sugar is a huge, huge problem. And I don't want to be, it's almost like a cliche to say, stop eating sugar, sugar's the devil, blah, 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 blah. And I don't want to be Mr., Puritan David Avocado Wolf, just eat organic stuff. I don't want to be that, but we just have to understand from a biochemical standpoint, the stuff is fire. It's explosive, and your body has only evolved to have very small amounts of it from berries. Back in the day, we were lucky if there were a couple of berries that we got, or maybe a little bit of honey, and we were thrilled with that. Today, our sugar intake is at like 150 pounds per person, or even more. I think it's like 170 pounds per person.
It's more than that, yeah.
It's ridiculous.
People say often, can I replace my sugar with honey? I say, well, think about how hard it would be to get honey or syrup or berries in the wild. It would be a once a year type of thing. You really wouldn't have that much of it. Here's
the thing about sugar. Your body doesn't really like sugar. It takes, you have to get used to it. Like if you stopped eating sugar for 3 days, say you put 4 teaspoons of sugar in your coffee or your tea or your cereal or whatever, and you stop for 4 days and then you did it again, you couldn't handle it. It would be way too sweet for you.
I get a big shock.
It would be a huge shock, but over time we get used to it, and then we need more and more and more sugar. This is one of the gifts of the body, is it kind of turns down the dial on things that happen over and over and over again, and that's kind of a gift. But we don't take advantage of that gift. We abuse that gift by doing more and more and more. And sometimes food processors, you know what they do? They'll put salt in their food so they could put more sugar in it.
Yep, absolutely. They use the sugar to cover up the salt and the salt to cover up the sugar.
Yes, because they know that even if we can't taste the sugar, we'll be addicted to it. So in order to load it up with sugar, but it won't be, to keep it palatable so that you'll still eat it, they'll put a bunch of salt in there so you won't know there's so much sugar in there. And processed food is notorious for this, especially ketchup and even mustard. They'll put all this sugar in there. You say, what does sugar do in there? I can't taste the sugar. Well, you can't taste it, but it's still activating your brain. It's still making your brain go, yippee, sugar, because that's what your brain does when it gets to sugar. That's why we all like sugar. Because our brain is designed to go, yippee, when we have sugar. So you can put sugar on a turd, and your brain will go, yippee, because it's sugar.
True, true. A lot of times, if you took sugar out of the recipe, it tastes like nothing, you know? All of these
Right.
cookies and stuff, it's
Right.
really
You
just
would
the
need it.
sugar. It's only the sugar. It's the
You
reason
would
we're eating
need
it.
it. You would need
Yeah.
it.
Ben, while we still got you here,
Yes.
it's going to
Let's
kick
take a
us
couple
off in about
questions,
10
and then I got
minutes.
a bowl.
Well, I want you to go in on one thing if you can.
Yeah.
There's sometimes where some people will change their diet or they'll get on supplements, not even just ours, basically any supplements, and they'll have an ongoing acne problem. I
From
don't
supplements?
like on supplements or
From? Are
again,
you saying from supplements?
well, it could be. This is part of the question.
I don't
I
think
don't
that's the
like to
case.
say, "Oh, it's a detox effect." A lot of
I don't
people
like
just
to
go in
say
and they
that either.
say, "I
I
think
don't
it's a
like it.
cop out."
I think it's a cop-out.
Does it have something to do with the liver? What is your opinion?
No, no. Nutrition is not going to cause you to have acne. Don't blame the nutrition. Blame something you're doing. Now, if you didn't have acne before and you start taking nutrients and all of a sudden you have acne, I've never heard of that happening. I mean,
I have.
people who don't have acne are not going to get acne, and not all pimples are acne. Acne is a disease that's caused by three factors. Number one, a differentiation issue, as we talked about earlier, and that causes the overproduction of protein called keratin that we talked about. Number two, sebum, which is skin oil. And number three, and this is the last phase or the last part of the process, is bacterial infection. The first part of the process is keratin, hyperproliferation of keratin, hardness. You can sometimes have keratin hardness without sebum and bacteria, and those will be little hard bumps sometimes people will get. Those are called milia, or there's other hard bumps. That's just an overproduction of keratin, and that's a sign that this differentiation process that we talked about earlier is not occurring as it should. But if you have excess oil in combination with excess keratin, then you'll get a pimple. It won't be a big zit though. It'll just be like a whitehead or a blackhead. If you have bacteria involved, if bacteria get trapped in there, in that follicle, that's where acne is happening, then you'll get a big old zit. The bacteria will proliferate, and that's where a classic pimple comes from. So here's the thing. Your skin is coated with holes on the surface, right? What are those holes called? Holes called?
Pores.
Pores, exactly. Now, underneath the pore, you have a rabbit hole. What's that rabbit hole called?
Oh, I forget this from our
It's
last
called a
talk.
follicle.
Follicle.
Okay, it's called a follicle. So did we talk about this last time?
I think so. And
Okay.
everything we need to know about skin, I called it or something like that.
Okay.
It was a while ago.
Okay, so you got
There's a
pore.
lot of details in the skin. I forget.
All right, well, here's the deal. You got a pore and a follicle. The follicle has two little things inside of it. It has an oil pump called a sebaceous gland, and it literally, it's the coolest thing. It's a little frickin' cellular pump that pumps out oil. The cells of this little pump, I mean, I don't want to get too in detail, but it's just unbelievably fascinating, really. The cells of this little pump will kind of explode and release oil, and that's called sebum. And the second thing that's in the follicle is a hair. Now, not all follicles have hairs. Some follicles are hairless. But when you do have a hair, you have a sebum, a sebaceous gland, you have a hair, and that hair comes out. Now, this is where acne happens, all right? The follicle, this rabbit hole, is lined with cells, like everything else in the body. It's made up of cells. When you have acne, something is causing these cells to divide really fast and out of control. It's a differentiation issue. That causes hard protein to be secreted because that's what these cells do. They make hard protein. Then you have this oil gland, and if it's producing a lot of oil, like if you're making a lot of insulin from eating a lot of sugar, or if you have a lot of male hormone, or if you have nutritional deficiencies that are causing your male hormones to be thrown off and you're producing the wrong balance of male hormones, that oil gland, or if you're under stress, if you're making cortisol, that oil gland will go crazy and you'll start to pump oil. So if you're a teenage boy or girl and you're making a lot of testosterone and you're making what I call super testosterone from nutritional imbalances, you're eating a lot of sugar and you're under stress, you got a perfect storm for hypersebaceous secretions. And if on top of that, you're deficient in certain fats, especially omega-6 essential fatty acids, that sebum will become really sticky. So now you'll have a condition where the cells are dividing really rapidly, differentiation problem. The oil is sticky and being produced in copious and abundant amounts. Now you have a perfect situation for a pimple, for a whitehead or a blackhead. You know what I'm talking about when I say whitehead or blackhead? If there are bacteria trapped inside that follicle, that's where you get a full-blown immune response and a big old pimple or a big zit. That is your classic acne pimple. you'll notice that there's multiple factors that are causing it. You got testosterone, you got omega-6 deficiencies, you've got cortisol, you've got insulin, you've got hyperkeratosis or the skin cells dividing really rapidly, secondary to vitamin A deficiency maybe, secondary to essential fatty acid deficiency. You've got bacteria, which are the third part of the process. You've got 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 different processes that are going on in order to cause the acne. All of those 7 or 8 or 9 different processes are in our control. We can supplement. We can reduce our stress levels. We can reduce our blood sugar levels. We can make sure we're taking care of nutritional deficiency issues. And also, this little follicle, the cells of the follicle, are especially prone to disruption when there's no oxygen or when there's a lack of oxygen. So if you have conditions where you're not breathing correctly or inflammatory conditions that are blocking the flow of oxygen, all of these can compound the process. So the reason I'm saying all this is not to blow people away and overwhelm people with all the things that are involved, but it's to say that there's so much we can do. We don't have to be victims. We don't have to say, help me. We don't have to run to a medical professional to get some kind of drug which isn't going to help. We can do all of these. We can address all of these mechanisms ourselves. Get on your Mighty 90 essential nutrients. Make sure you're using your ultimate EFAs. Make sure that you're taking extra specific nutrients like zinc and selenium and vitamin A specifically for the skin. Make sure you're correcting digestive health issues. Making sure you're using digestive enzymes and bile salts and lecithin. Relaxing the body, meditating. There's so many different things that we can do to address these issues, not just skin, our whole body, but especially the skin because, everybody sees our skin. People, I would say a lot of people, if not most people, care more about their skin than they care about their internal organs because everybody sees it.
You can see it, yeah.
Yeah, you can see it. So there's so much we can do is the bottom line. And that's why you have to go in, addressing the structure like we did this last half hour, 40 minutes. I think it's fascinating, number one, and it's relevant. We can all relate to it, but you cannot optimize the function of an organ or of the skin unless you understand how to leverage and exploit and take advantage of the structure. And that's why it's important to understand the structure.
Ben, if somebody is getting reactions from a variety of different things, because I've heard this is why when it's a variety of things, I'm like, well, I don't want to blame the food or the thing.
That's why you're such a smart guy, Brian. What you just said is brilliant. If it's happening to all kinds of different things, clearly it's not all the different things. It's the one thing that they all have in common. It's like, it kind of reminds me of this. People have problems in their lives. We live a life with a lot of problems. You ever run into somebody who has a lot of problems? The wife left him or the husband left her, the job's a problem, the money's a problem, they're sick, their kids are issues. You ever run into people like this? What's the one thing all of the problems have in common?
Stress.
No.
No?
No.
What is it?
Pretend it's you. You have all these problems. What's the one thing that all these problems have in common?
Your attitude. Yeah, I guess. Okay.
Yes. That's the one thing. If we have a lot of problems, the one thing that all the problems have in common is us. So control this. You know what I'm saying? That's the key to life is control this. If you're talking about the body, control this. If you're talking about the mind, control this. If you're talking about your life, control. We have so much control, but we have to take responsibility. We have to put the locus of responsibility where it belongs, right here. No matter what our health issue is, no matter what our financial issue is, no matter what our mental or emotional issue is, our relationship issue, our job issue, right here. Take responsibility right here. And that's why I love longevity so much. Longevity allows you to take responsibility. It gives you the tools so you can take responsibility for your physical health, for your financial health, for your mental health by understanding these things, for the health of your friends and your loved ones. You can take responsibility for how your life is showing up, and you can help others take responsibility for how their life is showing up. To me, longevity is so much more than just nutritional supplements. It is a platform for people who want to help change the world and make a difference in the world. And that's why I'm in it, and that's why you're in it. You took the ball and ran with it, man.
I consider this a family. Tell you the truth.
It's like a family. And people who are part of this family belong to something. We all belong to something that's bigger than us, which is this mission to help change the world at the most fundamental level there is, which is the level of good health and nutrition.
And you said something interesting there too about just understanding this in general. You know, the stress that's involved with a skin problem or a cancer or any of this stuff, and a biggest part of that, in my opinion, is the helplessness. You know,
It's awful. I talk to people all the time. Sometimes, I talk to people when they're desperate, like when they're.
Oh yeah.
I sometimes talk to
people always come. We're the end of the line.
The end of the line
when it comes to health.
Yes,
People are desperate by the
yes,
time they come to
yes.
us.
And I talk to people who had organs removed, like multiple organs removed. They've been carved up like a Christmas turkey, like starting when they were little kids. I had talked to a gal a few months ago. I'll never forget this. She had bad menstrual cycles, bad periods when she was a kid. So they gave her a hysterectomy, and then she got lumps in her breast. They took off her breast, and then her weight was out of control. So they stapled her stomach. And she was talking to me, and I was like, all you probably need to do is change your diet when you're 12 years old, And
yeah.
I felt so bad for her. I didn't say it like that, but I felt so bad for her because she was crying. She goes, they didn't tell me. That's what she said to me. They didn't tell me. Well, you can't count on them to tell you. That's not their job. I talked to somebody today. He had Crohn's disease 20 years ago. He's 47. 18 surgeries from Crohn's disease. And now he's dying in the hospital after his 18th surgery. He's dying in the hospital. He probably has a week to live. 47 years old, Crohn's disease. How can you do this to somebody? 18 surgeries.
I do call it butchery when they take any part of the stomach out.
The intestine.
Yeah.
They let the stomach, it's the intestine.
Any part of the digestive tract. I call it butchery.
Any part. All right, Ryan. I hope this was good.
Ben, I appreciate you. I've got a ton.
I've
got a ton of questions, truthfully.
Let's take 3 or 4.
I'm going to kick us off in a minute. I don't know if you mind coming right back on.
No, I can't. We can do another one, but
we can do another one.
Give me a
There's something that's bugging me, Ben.
Yeah.
Because I say it and you said it. You said probiotics may help you increase your absorption. To me, I'm not understanding this. The stuff is broken down in the stomach. Yes. It goes into the intestine, the upper intestine. Yeah. But the probiotics live mostly at the end of the line.
No, they live throughout the mostly in the bottom part of the intestine, but they live throughout. But mostly in the bottom part of the intestine and in the large intestine, of course. But here's the thing: what probiotics do? They do so many things. They create an environment in the intestine that makes the absorption of food, that improves the absorption of food. They do many things. That's one thing. They create an environment, a healthy cellular environment. Remember, all disease is cell disease. The whole body runs cellularly. So the intestine is lined with cells. The health of those cells depends on the health of those bacteria. The healthier those bacteria, the healthier those cells are going to be. The healthier those cells are going to be, the better, the easier the absorption of nutrients is going to be into the blood. So they create a healthy cellular environment. That's number one. There's many ways. That's number one. Does that make sense? You look like
yeah, it does. I'm paying attention. I'm trying to. Yeah.
Okay. So they create a healthy cellular environment, make the cells healthy. Number two, they communicate. These probiotics release chemicals that communicates to the gallbladder and the liver to help control bile secretion. And bile, of course, is important for the absorption of fat.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Number three, the bacteria themselves digest food. The bacteria themselves process food so that the fats and certain nutrients are released from foods more efficiently when bacteria are making certain chemicals. So the more bacteria you have, the healthier the microbiome, the healthier the flora, the healthier the secretions are going to be, and that's going to facilitate absorption. And then fourth of all, the bacteria make chemicals that go to your brain that control the whole digestive process at the neural level, at the central nervous system level. So you have multiple ways that these probiotics help. In fact, probiotics will actually tell your brain what kind of food to eat. Good bacteria will tell your food to eat good
If you overrun with bad bacteria, you're going to be telling to eat sugar.
Will say, go get potato chips, go get sugar, go get candy. The bacteria actually tell the brain what to eat, what it wants to eat. There's a gut-brain connection where these bacteria are literally communicating. In fact, one of the things these bacteria make is an incredible fatty acid, and this is the last thing I say because we're running out of time here, is an incredible fatty acid that we used to use as bodybuilders. You were a bodybuilder, weren't you? Did you tell me that you were a bodybuilder? Did you ever use something called GHB?
A lot of people did.
Yes.
A lot of people did.
Gamma hydroxybutyrate, right? And GHB was the most perfect substance because not only was it great for bodybuilding, but it was also a great aphrodisiac, like the most incredible aphrodisiac ever, and it helps you fall asleep instantly, and you would go to sleep for half an hour, 2 hours, and you wake up completely rested. It was the most incredible substance, so of course it became illegal. because you couldn't have something that incredible. It's completely non-toxic. It's made by the brain, and it's a derivative of a fatty acid that is not only made by bacteria in the gut, but also produced, get ready for this, in response to the ketogenic diet. And this is one of the reasons why the ketogenic diet has a reputation for being so important for the brain. Because the stuff that it's this butyric acid that's made in the gut, as well as by these gut bacteria, is one of the most calming and relaxing substances that the brain can use. It tells the brain everything is right in the world. It's a great antidepressant. It's a great appetite suppressant. I said earlier, it helps you sleep. It helps you. It enhances your libido. It's an incredible substance, and it helps your muscles repair. So it's great. It's great for people who are recovering. This fatty acid that's made by these bacteria, that's part of the whole ketogenic diet process, is also found in butter. In fact, it's one of the great advantages to eating butter. It's called butyric acid. And this GHB is gamma hydroxybutyrate. In fact, there's a substance that's similar, not exactly the same as gamma hydroxybutyrate, called gamma aminobutyrate or gamma aminobutyric acid, also known as GABA. You heard of GABA. GABA has the same kind of reputation. It's a relaxant. It helps you sleep. In fact, GABA is so effective as a relaxant and as a pain reliever and as an anti-inflammatory and as a general health substance that the drug companies tweaked the molecule a little bit and made something called pregabalin out of GABA so they could patent it, and it's sold as Lyrica. Have you heard of this medicine, Lyrica?
I have.
And Lyrica, they give you for fibromyalgia, and they give you for depression, and they give you for chronic pain. Why? Because Lyrica is pregabalin, which is a pharmaceutical version of GABA, which is the end result of this stuff that's made out of the good bacteria, the probiotics in your digestive tract. So probiotics are incredibly important.
Wow.
To answer your question about absorption, you can see how much stuff there is here. And it's really cool, I think.
Every time we talk, Ben, we never get finished.
Awesome. Well, it's good to talk to you. Sorry about my hairdo. Next time
Some people commented. It's okay.
I have to be honest with you.
Be you. know.
I got out of the shower, and I was like, oh, shoot, Ryan. And I didn't have time to comb my hair. And so I just ran to the Instagram. So that's what happened. But that's me.
Ben, I would love you to come on back next week if you could
let's
follow up.
Save the questions, and we'll do the questions.
I will. There's a lot of questions in here. Guys,
Ryan,
I am going to save it.
Ryan, you are my hero. You're
Come
my
on.
reverse hero because you're younger than me. But you're my reverse hero. But you're so awesome. What you're doing is so cool. What you do with Instagram, what you do with Wallach's Warriors, what you do with your books, what you do because you just want to get the word out because you're so dedicated. You are a beautiful human being. And the world needs more Ryan Alexanders. And too bad we don't have more people like you. And everybody out there listening, if you're not in Ryan's downline, sign up. Because he can help you build your business. He can help you understand your body and nutrition. And you get to hang out with Ryan.
I'd love to talk more about the business on here, truthfully. But Ben, you're definitely one of my heroes as well. One of my mentors for sure, 100%. I said this at the beginning. I don't think you're on yet. I would not be here if it weren't for you. I would not understand this if it weren't for you.
That's awesome. All right, man. I'm proud to know you, Ryan. Thanks. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Have a great night, Ben, and everybody else. I will save this. I will edit it. I will post it on YouTube after. Appreciate all of you. Hope everybody has a good night. Take care, guys.
And definitely check out my book, Fake Diseases. It covers all of the major topics that come up, like birth defects, blood sugar problems, bone and joint problems, cancer, autoimmune problems, and more. And it's on Amazon for just $9.99. And of course, make sure to check out our food page, Notice Foods, that's on YouTube, and at Notice Foods on Instagram. We have a lot of content up there teaching you how to cook without the bad foods that Dr. Wallach describes, and Dr. Glidden's 12 bad foods, all of that, all of the rules that you need to know. And we have experienced chefs and bakers who will answer the questions in those inboxes. Definitely get yourself a copy of Dr. Wallach's cookbook. This is basically a textbook teaching you everything you know about how to cook without the bad foods, particularly oil and gluten and all of the other problematic things on the list. This is 300 pages stuffed full of recipes, every traditional recipe that you could think of, and modern dishes without the bad foods that they're usually made from. And I've also published a book in response to some of Dr. Wallach's criticisms, including the major articles that have been written against him on the internet. So if you are a Dr. Wallach fan, or a longevity distributor, I definitely recommend having this book in your toolkit. I'm very excited to announce my newest book, Everything the Government Does is Bad for Us. And you can get the paperback on Amazon for just $9.99, and you can find the video read-along version or the audiobook on my website, noticebooks.org. And all of my books, audiobooks, and links are available on my website, noticebooks.org. And make sure to check out my channel for many other videos on a whole array of subjects, and my other channels are all in the description of this video. And if you'd like to talk to us directly, you can call us. Actually, you can call Judy. She's downriver Detroit. You can call from anywhere in the US, Canada, Mexico, UK, Australia, New Zealand, any other country. You want to email us or send us a DM on whatever app that you want to contact us on. Instagram is super convenient for us. And that's for any sales or product information in those countries, or any distributor information,